Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Developing an Effective Value Proposition. My name is Michelle Eisenberg, and I am a program assistant here at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. And for those of you who may not know, the NASDAQ Center is a nonprofit improving access and knowledge in entrepreneurship to advance economic progress for all. And as you'll see in the chat in just a moment, the NASDAQ Center provides programs, resources, and exceptional mentorship to help entrepreneurs fuel prosperity no matter where their journey begins. So definitely be sure to check out those links and resources in the chat. And we're just going to launch a few polls to step back, take a temperature gauge on how everyone is doing in the room today. And we use this information to guide the programs we provide for this global community of entrepreneurs. So if there are any specific topics or challenges you would like us to create resources for, definitely feel free to share those in the chat here. Awesome. And just a couple of quick housekeeping notes before we get started. First, let us know where you are dialing in from in the chat. We always love to see where everyone is joining us for our time together today. And second, we're going to have live Q&A at the end of the event. So please submit your questions at any time using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we will do our best to get to as many as we can. Awesome. And while you are answering, I would love to just take a moment to recognize the incredible support of our corporate partners. The work we do at the center would not be possible without the generosity and belief of our partners and funders, including NASDAQ, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase, KPMG, Walmart, the Asia Innovation Hub, Wilson Sonsini, the Narit Foundation, and BPM. We are deeply grateful for their partnership, and we hope you will join us in sharing that appreciation. Amazing. We have one more poll going here. I see we got folks from Maryland, California, Florida, Georgia, Washington, D.C., Idaho, Illinois, Arizona. Oh, wonderful. Got folks all over the place. Texas, amazing. Alabama, wow. Wow, really all over the place today. That's awesome. Wonderful. Give this. All right. With that, without any further delay, please join me in giving the warmest welcome to our special guest, Shannon Collins, co-founder and chief operating officer at Lightwork Enterprise. Shannon, thank you so much for joining us for this topic. I know this is something that entrepreneurs have been asking for a while, so really excited to have you here with us today, and I'm going to pass it right over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Michelle. And so, yes, welcome everyone. I am excited and thankful to be here. Today, we will be discussing value propositions. And so, some of you may be familiar with that topic, some of you may not be. But if not, I'm going to pretty much kind of help everyone from whichever stage you find yourself. So, today, again, discussing developing an effective value proposition. Okay. So, as Michelle mentioned, I am the co-founder of Lightwork Enterprise, and I'm also the director of global entrepreneurial learning for Graph IQ. And I also serve as the National Science Foundation ICO instructor. And so I work with PhD students as well as faculty members at Cornell, at Princeton, as well as Arizona State University, discussing this very topic amongst many others. So today we're going to talk about what a value proposition actually is. We're going to discuss problem solution fit, customer pains, gains, jobs, and then I want to give you all tools to be able to craft a compelling value proposition. So let's start with that, a value proposition. So a value proposition is a short statement that explains how your product or service helps customers accomplish their important goals by alleviating pains, creating gains, and delivering superior value to current alternatives. So those three terms there, we're going to talk about those in depth. They make up the core of a value proposition. What is it that your customers are wanting to achieve? And as it relates to the job they're trying to achieve. And what pains are you alleviating with your product or your service? Or what gains are you creating? And we'll talk about the three of those in depth today. So let's now talk about why having a clear value proposition, why does it even matter? So one, having a clear value proposition, it helps you clarify your business focus. So one thing that is really important, especially with a new product or new service, is defining who your customers are. I can't tell you how many times I've heard an entrepreneur say, everyone will want my product. Well, it's really hard to market to everyone and really understand and address their needs. So having a clear value proposition allows you to clearly define who your customers are. You're able to determine what's most important to them when it comes to the problems that they're trying to have alleviated and what improvements are they looking for in terms of gains that your solution can offer them. Having a clear value proposition also helps you to improve your understanding and connection with your customers. So it helps you to clearly explain why customers should choose you over competitors. This is very helpful when it comes to marketing. So when you know the pains your customer is experiencing or the gains they're hoping to achieve, you can state those clearly across all marketing platforms. And I'll probably mention that in a second here as well. It also helps you to communicate the benefits that truly resonate with their needs. Okay. As I was just mentioning, it helps you to enhance your marketing and sales effectiveness. It also helps guide your strategic decisions. So instead of wasting time and money on features or services that your customers aren't even interested in, when you have a clear value proposition, you understand the problem, the pains they're experiencing, you can spend time focusing on those things and creating the services and the products that meet those needs. It also increases your appeal to investors. When you're able to show a clear understanding of your market and also have a compelling reason as to why your customers will buy, that makes you more attractive to investors. So value propositions, having clear, strong value propositions are very, very important. And so a great tool for developing value propositions is the business model canvas. Some of you may be familiar with this tool, but some of you may not be. But this is a widely used tool. Sometimes there's some variations when it comes to this canvas, but this is a standard canvas that many businesses and organizations use to map, describe, and analyze key elements of their business model. So the business model canvas has 9 elements, but we're going to focus on just the 2 elements that really speak to value proposition today. And that's obviously the value proposition as well as the customer segment. So let's first start with how the business model canvas can help you to develop your value proposition. So as you can see from the column, there are questions that the business model canvas provides to help you think about the value that you're offering to your customers and how that value is connected to a problem that they have. And so you see just at the very top, 2 of those questions that the business model canvas wants entrepreneurs and organizations to think about is what value do you deliver to your customers? And which one of your customers' problems are you helping to solve? So as you all may know, your customers can have various problems, many problems that they may want to have solved, and you just cannot meet all of those needs. But where does your service or product, what specific problem are you seeking to solve? Okay, and being very clear about that. I've added a lot of different ways in which companies, products, and services can deliver value to customers. I won't go through all of them, but I'll just mention a few of them. You can offer value to a customer by delivering faster results, reducing risk, reducing time, streamlining their processes. These are the type of things that add value. And we'll discuss later what constitutes value versus what many may think their customers may value. Okay. So let's now look at customer segments. So customer segments is basically another way of saying, who are your customers? What is the specific group you're trying to market and sell to? So you see the questions here. For whom are we creating value? And who are our most important who are our most important customers? Another way to think about that, you may solve the problem for multiple customer groups. Another way to say that is the customer segments. But who might have what we call is a shark bite problem versus a mosquito bite problem. So, another way of thinking about that is you may solve a problem that is urgent and necessary for one group, but maybe a nice to have for a second group. It would be advantageous to focus on the first group because they're most likely to buy. Because when you are able to clearly present the problem you solve, they understand that that's a serious problem that they have, and they may be more likely and it may be a more urgent need of theirs to buy or purchase your service or product. So let's look at a few other types of customer segments, different ways in which you can break down customers into groups. You can have a mass market. So this is a large group of customers with broadly similar needs. So this could be grocery shoppers as an example. Another example is a multi-sided customer segment. So this is a company or organization that's wanting to serve two or more interdependent customer groups. This could be a ride-sharing platform for both drivers and passengers to succeed. This is like Uber. Okay, so Uber, and the example we're going to use today is very similar to Uber, but Uber has both drivers and riders. Both of them are serviced through the same platform, but they have different needs. Okay, another type of customer segment is the technographic. And so you could have a product or service that you're trying to market to a particular group of customers by the technology they use or prefer. One way to categorize people who, as far as cell phone use, there are avid iPhone users, okay, versus Android. So maybe your service or product is tailored for an iPhone user. It could be a specific app or a new feature that you want iPhone to pick up. And so that would be a way of breaking down customer segments based on the type of technology that a customer might use. Okay, so now let's look at an example of a business model canvas for a well-known company that many of us may be familiar with. And that's Airbnb. Okay, so again, we're just going to focus on the two segments of customer segments and value proposition. But looking here at customer segment, you can see that Airbnb has what I just called a multi-sided customer segment. They have customers who are hosts and guests. So let's look at the value proposition section for those two customers. And so one important thing to know is that there are different value propositions for the company's different customer segments. And this is going to be true for any customer segment that you have. As you begin to group your customers by their needs, they will value different solutions. Okay. So you'll have a different value proposition for every customer segment. Okay. It's very rare that two very distinct customer segments will have the same value propositions for them because, again, the needs are different. And as we'll talk about in a little bit later here, the customer's needs, the problem that they want solved, that is the core, as I mentioned with the definition, for your value proposition. Okay, so let's now look at the business model canvas again and begin to think about some questions that we may need to answer outside of the questions that are listed here on the business model canvas. So when most entrepreneurs are wanting to communicate to customers and investors why their product or service is valuable, they will often want to answer the question of what their product does. But that's not the capabilities of their product or service is not what makes it valuable or needed. That's basically just discussing the features. Now, while the features of your product or service are very important, it is not what in and of itself what offers value to your customers. So let's take a look at this diagram here. So while the features of your product or your service are definitely related to the benefits your customers are most interested in, and they can lead to those benefits, in and of themselves are not where the value lies when you're communicating to customers. And so if any of you have ever tried to, even when you're pitching, you're pitching to a potential customer or you're pitching to an investor, you might wonder why you might lose their attention. And typically, people are listening to what benefits them. So you may be going on and on about great features, but if they don't connect those features to benefits that they're interested in, they're going to lose interest. And so this is very important for your website, for any marketing materials. Instead of just listing features, you want to make sure that you're communicating the benefits that will be received in relation to the features. Okay? So just because your product has great features, it does not mean that your customer will care enough to buy it. When you begin to speak about the benefits that are important to your customer, that's when they begin to listen, and that's when you're able to communicate the value of your product or your service more clearly to your customer. So the better question to ask is, why do my customers need my product? This is what you want to understand. What is it that makes what I'm offering to my customer of great value? Why do they need it? Okay. And as you make this very clear to your customers, this makes them more open to wanting to purchase your service or your product. Now, what makes your messaging even more clear and effective is when you're not able to answer not only why do your customers need your product, but you're able to go a step further and say, how does your product solve your customer's problem specifically? If you're able to communicate this in your messaging and your value proposition, this is going to make a world of a difference. Okay. And when you're able to do so, you're able to establish that strong connection between your customer's problem and the solution you have. You have developed what we call problem solution fit. Now, problem solution fit is the stage in the business model process where you confirm that your proposed solution directly addresses a real and validated problem faced by your target customers. Okay? So let's take a look at the business model process. So there's three main stages of the business model process, and many entrepreneurs aren't aware of this. They just think, I have a great product, I'm going to go to market, and then they find a very hard time connecting with customers and really getting to the point where they're able to scale as a company. Okay. And so understanding the stages and understanding where you are in the stages as in the process is very important. So when you're trying to determine what problem your customer has and if your solution actually meets that problem or the idea of the solution you're trying to develop, you're in the problem solution stage. Okay. Once you have identified a clear customer problem or unmet need in the market that many people care about and you have a solution for, you have achieved problem solution fit. And we're going to stay just there for today's session, but there's definitely, places in which you can learn more about product market fit if that's where you find yourself, and even business model fit. Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about problem solution fit. So why does establishing problem solution fit, why does it matter? So achieving problem solution fit, it reduces the risk of building products no one wants. So 90% of all startups fail. And we believe this is a main reason why, because many startups have a great idea. It's a fantastic idea. The product or service has great features, but the problem is no one wants it. And so before you waste time and money investing into a product or a service no one wants, you want to make sure you have a clear understanding of the customer group you're trying to go after. Do you understand the problem that they have? Do you understand what they're wanting to achieve? And does that correlate strongly with the solution that you're offering? So again, achieving problem solution fit also ensures your value proposition is based on real customer insights and not assumptions. Now, we don't have time to go into this today, but one thing I work with when I'm working with my faculty members at universities, as well as my doctoral students, is we talk about doing customer discovery. So that's actually getting out there and talking to customers or people who may belong to your customer segment, getting their idea and their real insights as to many questions. One being, the problem that I think you have, is this a problem that you indeed have? And this solution, do you agree that this would be a solution to the problem that you have? That's a very, very high level way of looking at it. But doing customer segment and actually talking with your customers is going to help you to develop that problem solution fit, in which you know based on concrete evidence that your customers that you're going after, they have the problem that you're seeking to solve with your solution and your service. It also helps you to build a strong foundation for product market fit, which is the next stage in the business model process. Okay. So let's look back once more at the two columns we're focusing on today: value proposition and customer segment. And let's look at a different way to look at value proposition. And this was embedded in the definition for value proposition that I started with at the start of the presentation, and that is concerning pains and gains. So when it comes to your customers, you have to understand who will benefit most from the problem that you solve. And with the problem that you solve, what specific pains are you seeking to help reduce? And what gains are you hoping to create for your customers? So let's start with the pains. So when it comes to your customers' pains, you want to understand what things are your customers trying to decrease or eliminate. And you want your product or service to be a pain killer. So if they have one of your customers' pains is that maybe a process that they have to complete is very expensive. So your option, your solution, or your service should help them to cut expenses. Again, if it's a problem that they're experiencing significantly has to do with risk. This could be in the healthcare sector. Maybe your product or your service helps them to eliminate some of that risk that they're concerned about, and so forth. So you want to identify a significant pain that your customer has. And this could be B2B or this could be B2C. It works all the same. You want to understand that pain, and you want your solution, which is your service or your product, to be a pain killer. Okay. So what type of questions should you be answering to really pinpoint some of your customers' pains? So you want to understand what annoys or frustrates your customers the most. What situations make your customers unhappy or dissatisfied? What causes stress or irritation for your customers? And what do your customers complain about most often? When you're able to answer these questions, and again, one great way to do it is by actually getting out there and speaking to potential customers, but there could also potentially be surveys that maybe a market research company has done that you're able to get a hold of to get some of these answers. But these are just a few questions that will help you to pinpoint those pains that your customer has, so that you again can determine if you have problem solution fit with your product or service. Okay, so let's now take a look at customer gains. So when it comes to customer gains, what you're trying to determine is what things are your customers trying to increase or add? Okay. Do they want more convenience? Do they want to experience happiness? Do they want their job made easier? Do they want improved communications? So it's slightly different than the pains. It's what they want to increase, what they want more of. And does your product or service provide that? Okay. And let's look at a few questions that will help you to pinpoint some gains or game creators that what would resonate best and most with your customers. So the first one being, what would help your customers get things done faster or more easily? What benefits or outcomes do your customers value the most? What reductions in cost or resource use would they appreciate the most? What would make their daily tasks smoother or more convenient? These are just a few questions, and you can be very, very creative with questions, and you can begin to narrow them down to really begin to ask questions that align most with your service or your product to really get a better idea. But generally, these are the type of questions you want to be asking to get a good view of what type of creation you can add with your service or your product. So let's look at the a statement here about pains and gains for your customer. So a product or service adequately addresses pains and delivers gains when it helps customers complete important jobs more effectively. And again, these three terms, pains, gains, and important jobs, this is right in the definition that we started with for value proposition. And so this is more clearly seen when you have a B2B model and you're looking at a customer who has a particular title or position. Sometimes it's easier to determine the job they're trying to complete and where your service or product would be beneficial in what we call their workflow. But this is even true if you're doing a B2C. And so let me kind of break that down. So a B2B is if you're selling to businesses, and a B2C if you're selling directly to customers. Even if you're selling directly to customers, they also have important jobs that they're wanting to achieve. And we're going to talk about that now and how the idea of an important job applies to your customer if you're trying to sell to a business or if you're trying to sell directly to consumers. So, what is a customer job? Well, a customer job is the specific task, goal, or desired outcome a customer is trying to achieve in a given situation. This is also referred to as the job to be done. So, you can see in the definition, this can apply to your customer, whether they're a business and you're and one thing we make clear in our program with the National Science Foundation is when you are selling to a business, your customer is not the business itself. Your customer are the people who work for the business. So if you have a B2B model and I ask you who your customers are and you say hospitals, I'm going to say, well, you can't sell to a hospital. A hospital can't purchase. Who at the hospital is going to want to purchase your product or your service? Okay. So whether you're selling to a business, a person who resides within a business or a customer, they all can have a customer job, a specific task or goal or desired outcome that they're trying to achieve. Now, when it comes to the customer, because they have a task, a goal, or desired outcome, when you present your product or your service, it's not that they just want your product or service. And you can kind of see here with the quote, people don't want to buy a quarter-inch drill. They want a quarter-inch hole. A quarter-inch hole. So what does that mean? That means they don't want your product simply because your product, again, as I mentioned previously, has all these great features. They want your product because there is a solution or benefit your product provides. So again, some of the same type of language. What is the problem that they have? What is the task and the goal or desired outcome that they're trying to achieve? And how does your product and how does your service help them to achieve that goal? And so sometimes you, again, an entrepreneur can go on and on about the great features of their product and they lose their customer. When you begin talking about the clear benefits, the clear solution your product provides for a problem your customer has, they're listening. Okay. So let's look at customer jobs and the different categories that a job can fall into. So there's three categories for a customer job. There's the functional category, social, and emotional. So the functional is just very simple. It's a practical task or problem the customer wants to accomplish or solve. So this could be sending an email efficiently, traveling from point A to point B. So those are pretty easy to see and understand and even pinpoint. The next two maybe a little bit hard to determine from face value, and that's the social and emotional. So for the social, your customer wants to be perceived by others in a particular type of way. And this can be address their status, their image, or their identity. So this could be your customer might want to use eco-friendly products to be seen as responsible. Or they might want to drive a luxury car to signal success. And so you can kind of, if you think about companies that are marketing to customers based on their social customer job, let's say the driving a luxury car to signal success. If that is what the customer wants to accomplish, remember a customer job is a task or something that the customer is wanting to accomplish. If they want to accomplish the goal of signaling their success to others, a company that's wanting to market this to them will use language that helps them to understand the benefits that they're looking for that customer that company provides. So they may use words such as luxury, this luxury vehicle, or this luxury hotel. Well, customers who are interested in the more luxurious things, that type of wording and language is going to really speak to them. And then the third one is emotional. So this is personal feelings or emotional states customers seek to achieve or avoid. So this could be feeling secure with a home alarm system. Again, think about alarm companies and the type of language they're using. Do you want to feel safe? Do you want your family to feel secure? They are speaking to that emotional customer job that they're targeting with their customers. Okay, so when you begin to think about this, really organizations that are successful, they're very clear about what their customers job is, what they're trying to achieve, and they speak to it. Okay, and it could also be another example for emotional is achieving peace of mind with a spa service. So what might that spa service add in their marketing? Is your job stressful? Are you looking for a place of peace? They're speaking to that emotional customer job that the customer has. Okay, so again, the more you understand the customer, the more you can speak to their needs, and the more you will effectively attract them for business. Okay. So let's look at customer jobs as it relates to pains and gains. So for pains, the frustrations, challenges, or risks that make completing the job difficult or unpleasant. So again, this is the customer job, and those pains are whatever frustrates the customer or challenges or risk that may come up as they're trying to complete the job. The gains as it relates to their customer job are the benefits, positive results, or improvements the customer hopes to experience when the job is done successfully. So all of these things work together, understanding your customer's jobs, or the job they're trying, or the task they're trying to achieve, and what pains and gains are related to that job. Again, all those three components are all there in our value proposition. So now let's look at another template that is helpful to determine what are the customer jobs that your customer might have, and so that you can better speak to them. So this is a jobs to be done template created by Lean Labs. And we'll go through a few examples for Airbnb. For Airbnb, but let's just take a look at this. So the first column talks about the situation. So what is the situation which triggers that need or job to be done by your customer? The second column is motivation. What does the customer want to do? And then the next three talks about those three categories of jobs to be done. And the first one being the functional. Why? Why do your customers want this? What is their desired outcome? Second being the emotional job. What will the emotional state of what will the emotional state of the customer be when the job is complete? And then the third, how will the customer look to others when they solve the situation? And so this is just a good tool to use to kind of begin to get down your thoughts of what your customers might be looking to achieve with the different types of jobs, whether that be functional, emotional, or social. And again, you want to actually get out there and test if your assumptions are true. That could be through market research, as I mentioned earlier, customer discovery, but you want to use this template to basically get down your assumptions, write down your assumptions, and then begin to test those. Let's look at an example from Airbnb. So it's for an Airbnb host. So the situation for the host is when they have extra property or a spare room, they want to earn income by renting to trusted guests. Okay, that's the situation. What's their motivation? They want to maximize occupancy and revenue while minimizing risk and hassle. So that they can, this is the functional job to be done, list, manage, and rent property easily and generate new income. How might that make them feel? It might make them feel proud, secure, and empowered by sharing space and earning income. And the social job that could be done, or the social job the customer might want to achieve, is they might want to be seen as entrepreneurial, hospitable, and resourceful. Okay, so this is a breakdown for Airbnb. If they want to look at their customer, the host, and the situation, motivation, and jobs to be done, um, in the three categories that they believe that their best customer would align with. Okay. Let's look at what the on the guest side. So for a guest for Airbnb, again, as I mentioned, these are two different customer segments. They have different needs, they have different value propositions. So of course they have different jobs to be done. So the guests, when they want to travel and they need a place to stay, they may look for a booking that's affordable, comfortable, and unique. And their motivation, they might want to easily search, compare, and book accommodations that suit their needs. So that they can then find and book safe, comfortable, affordable places to stay, making them feel excited, safe, at home, and satisfied with the choice. And then they can be seen as savvy, adventurous travelers who try unique and authentic experiences to others. If Airbnb has this clear understanding that their best customer meets this profile as far as their jobs to be done, they can speak to that emotional need through their marketing. Do you want exciting places to stay that are safe and make you feel at home? They can put all of this right in the wording for their marketing. And they can also, when it comes to just the functional side of it, find and book safe places to stay, as you travel. All of this is, you need to understand this if you're wanting to market effectively to your customers, letting them know that the problem they have, you have the solution. Okay. Now, before we wrap everything up and begin to talk about ways in which you can craft your value proposition, let's look back at the definition once more. And so again, we've talked about the important jobs and the three categories that those jobs can fall in for your customers. We talked about pains and gains and what those mean and how they relate to that important job. So now let's pull it all together and use our very last template to craft your value proposition. So this is called the value proposition canvas. Okay. And so the value proposition canvas has many components, but it has all the components that we talked about today and that all of you are now aware of and are able to actually utilize this template in a very effective way for your service or your product. So we see here, this is where you would outline your product and services. And here, this is problem solution fit. So this is the customer on the right in the circle, and this is your product on the left. Is there a strong connection with the problems that the customer has and the solution that you have? This is problem solution fit. If it is a strong connection. The gains that the customer wants to have that they don't currently have, and the pains they want to get rid of, those are the customer's problems. And the gain creators that your product and service offers, and also the pain relievers your product and service offers, is your solution. And then lastly is the customer's job to be done. That's also represented here in the template. So again, we've discussed all of these things. You all are pretty much experts now when it comes to these different features, not features, but different components of the template that you will be able to complete it and then utilize it in your marketing if you're preparing for a pitch, or you're preparing for if you want to revamp your website and you want stronger messaging to really meet and speak clearly to your customers. You can utilize this value proposition canvas. Okay, but let's look at an example with Airbnb. Let's look at the guest, okay? So on the left, we have Airbnb as the company and what they're offering to their customer segment, who are guests or travelers. So I will just go through this pretty quickly. So we can see that the gains that the guest is interested in, they want a variety of choices when it comes to places to stay. They want cost savings and unique experiences and easy booking. What they want to avoid, those pains, are high hotel costs, quality uncertainty, and safety concerns. What are their customer jobs? They want to enjoy amenities and comfort. They want to browse and book lodging. They want to experience local culture and find affordable, unique stays. So that is the customer profile is the way that we term that. And on the left, we have what the product and services are that Airbnb is offering as a company. So we have the Airbnb, as far as product and services, the Airbnb platform and app. They're offering secure payment system, customer support, detailed listings with reviews as far as their products and services. The game creators they're offering that aligns with what the guest is looking for. They provide easy booking. They provide spacious amenities, unique stays, and local experiences. Okay. And then for the pain relievers, Airbnb offers competitive prices, safety checks, reviews and photos, and secure payments. Okay. And so if you can see here the two arrows meeting in the middle, this is to make sure this is a template to help you to determine, is there that problem solution fit? Are you able to clearly outline the problem your customer has, and do you have a solution to meet those problems? And then after you complete the template, you then want to use the value proposition statement, which again, as you can kind of see from the icons, it just takes everything you completed in the previous template and it puts it together in one statement. Okay. So you want to say your product or service helps your customer segment who wants to, was a job they're trying to do. Again, that could be functional, emotional, or social by reducing or avoiding this particular customer pain that you determine, and increasing and enabling a customer gain that your product or service offers, unlike your competitors and what their value proposition currently is. Okay, so let's look at the example for the guest for Airbnb. So Airbnb could say our travel booking platform and mobile app helps guests and travelers who want to book affordable, unique, comfortable stays easily by reducing quality and safety concerns and providing savings, authentic experiences, and variety, unlike traditional hotel chains. So this is a big mouthful, but you can break this up and begin to have distinct messaging that may just focus on the customer pain or may just focus on the customer gain, but all of it is your value proposition statement as a whole that you can use to have clear messaging to your customers that you solve the problems they have. So just a few key learnings from today. A clear value proposition answers three core questions. Who is your customer? What jobs are they trying to get done? How does your product or service relieve their pains and creates the gains better than alternatives? Customers don't want your product. They want the solution or outcome it provides. Okay. So to make sure you focus on how your product or service solves their problem and improves their situation and not just talking at length about the features that don't connect with the benefits that your customers are most interested in. You want to adapt your different value propositions for different segments. So if you serve multiple customer segments like Airbnb, serving guests and hosts, you want to craft distinct value propositions for each of those groups. And then lastly, problem solution fit is essential. We don't want anyone to be in that 90% of the startups that fail. Okay, so you want to ensure your product or service is directly solving a real and important problem for your customer before begin investing money and time to not be successful in the end. Then lastly, features are not the value. Customers do not want to buy your product's list of features. They buy the benefits that your features will provide. Okay. And with that, I do thank you all for your time, and it's been definitely a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Shannon. That was so wonderful. Just so many, juicy pieces of insight, strategies that founders can apply right away. Love the templates that you shared. It's just so clear and easy to follow. We do have time for some questions here. So if you are in the audience and you have a question, yes, we're going to send out all of these resources following the event. So definitely be on the lookout for that. Don't worry there. But yeah, if you have a question for Shannon, make sure to drop it in that Q&A box. I see we have a couple here already, so we can just start going through. This one's pretty simple. How long should the value proposition statement be? One sentence, two? I know you kind of, gave a, somewhat of a structure there, but, how long is too long? How long is too short,
Right, right, right. So we definitely, it as it said in the definition, it should be short, as short as possible. You want to communicate all of the important information, but anytime you're talking to your customers, you want to be concise. Because the more long-winded you are, they're going to forget what you said previously. So it's best to have it be one sentence and make it as concise as possible. Okay?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. Yeah, exactly. It's like that hook, exactly. So it's like leading you into those longer conversations, which is great. Wonderful. Let's see. Um, would you recommend a competitive analysis prior to this process? Your thoughts on that, how that might influence, the way you frame that value proposition.
Right. A competitive analysis can definitely be helpful. So if you're doing a competitive analysis for your competition who are already working in your market, they have an understanding and they have successfully tapped into some of those problems that your customer has. So it's definitely something to use during this process, but you don't necessarily have to do it before you start this process. I think it's a good place to gather information about what your customers' problems are, what gains they might be looking for, what pains they might be experiencing. If your competitors are already operating successfully, they've been able to tap into them successfully to some degree. So I think it's a good source of information for you.
Yeah, yeah. Wonderful. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, definitely something for folks to think about as they're either, kind of entering that process or, if you're right within it. So amazing. And then, we had another question here, I think that was kind of around um, you know, is a value proposition like a one and done? Is it something that should, be revisited later on? What would that, typically look like?
Right. So you definitely want to revisit it. And I really take this from Steve Jobs. You want to always be talking to your customers because things change. Right. So especially with the business model canvas, value proposition is an important component of the business model canvas as a whole. Your business model canvas should always be you should be revising it as you learn more about your market. Okay. But it will come to a point where you have a clear understanding of the problems you're trying to solve with your current service or product. Now, if you're wanting to then introduce a new product or service, then you would have definitely would go through the process again. But it can, until you have validated your value proposition, it is open and it should be changed as you're speaking with more customers, doing more market research, because your first one should be based primarily on your assumptions.
Yeah. Yeah, really, really insightful. Thank you. Oh, I see. This is really interesting. I just saw this question come through the chat. Um, how do you convert your value proposition into like a networking opportunity? And I think, we've talked a little bit about that, how that kind of is, hooking them in, but I know, a lot of entrepreneurs are like constantly in these spaces, trying to connect with the right people. So just, any thoughts on, like the right way to, bring that piece into the conversation?
Right. I think using your value proposition to speak to the problem you are solving for your customers is pretty much it. If you begin saying, this is my company, this is the problem that we solve for this customer, and this is how we solve it. I think that's the best way to use the value proposition in that way. Because when you begin talking about problems that you solve, if you're wanting to connect with the right people, they're aware of that problem, and you should be able to move on from there. But I think using your value proposition to clearly speak about your customers and the problem that you're solving for them is the way you would want to go about that.
Yeah, love that. Love that. It's like, kind of like stay focused there. It'll guide you in the right direction. Wonderful. A lot of great questions here. We have another one. Is the value proposition for your whole company for your company as a whole? Or, is it kind of, can it be for each product? What's kind of like, the general practice there?
Right. So it depends on your company. So if your company only has one product, then you have one value proposition. If your
Yeah.
company has multiple product and services, then you're going to have, or even if you have one product, but you have multiple customer segments. Remember, I was saying for every customer segment, they have a
Yeah.
different value proposition. So
Yeah.
you either have different multiple value propositions because you have multiple services and products, or you have multiple distinct customer segments. So therefore, you would have multiple value propositions that way as well. So again, you could just give you an example. You could sell bicycles, but you sell bicycles to the average rider as well as the professional
Yeah.
bicycle, person who cycles. You would have different value propositions for those two customer segments, even though your product is a bike. You might also have a different bike for them as well. So.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great example. Really, really interesting. So, yeah, that's kind of going to be like a case by case basis for each entrepreneur, but really, really great to consider. Um, yeah, I think this is an important question because obviously, kind of like the root of this is the customer problem that you're trying to solve, like you were just saying. So, any, just tips, pitfalls to avoid in terms of, identifying those major urgent pains and gains that customers want to achieve or resolve.
um I would say one warning, and I kind of mentioned this in the presentation. You want to make sure that you have validated that problem. So again, you may have an idea, but you want to use, and honestly, the best way is to talk to customers. It's free. They give you free insight, and go and speak to potential customers and really determine whether or not that's a problem. And I would caution, don't speak to one person and say, okay, they said yes, so this means that it's true. Think of it like data. You wouldn't make a call on data or see a relationship with data if you're looking at you may be looking at a graph with multiple data points. You need to gather information from multiple people to determine if that relationship exists. So I would caution listening to one person to say that you validated the problem. And I would definitely caution against not validating it at all. So other
Yeah.
than that, I mean, get out there and speak to people, find surveys, do market research, validate that problem before you invest the time in your money.
Yeah, and just a follow-up question here because I see it in the chat. How do you know when it's validated?
Right. So that's a really great question. I mean, some people have, I believe the number was like maybe 167 or so interviews or something close to that. But really, you've been in your market and you know your market to some extent. I would say once we say it this way, once you begin to hear the same exact thing over and over and over again, we call it saturation. Let's say you spoke to 25 people who are your potential customers and they're all saying the same things. I think at that point you can begin to have some type of resolve that you are heading in the right direction, and it wouldn't be a complete waste to begin investing time and money. Okay, so one is too few, even though one is enough to get insights. Once you hit about, it just depends, but let's say 20 to 30 people and you're hearing the same exact thing, I think at that point it would not be a waste of time or money to begin, moving in that direction. But you always want to continue, always want to listen to your customers. And as I said, Steve Jobs was a great example with the iPhone. He was always talking to customers, always wanting to receive feedback. And when you actually gain customers, you want to reach out and learn more about those who are your current customers. Okay. So always gathering information, but I would say 20 to 30 people and they're saying the same thing, it wouldn't be a waste of time or money to move in that direction.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, yeah. It at least kind of gives folks like an idea of, like, how far do I need to push to like start really moving towards like, okay, this is, something that I can actually work with. Um, Amazing. I think we have time for one more question. Let's see. Okay, so we have a question here. Um, you know, I know we have a lot of entrepreneurs that, are working on businesses and part of the challenge here is like diluting, almost down all the incredible work that you do into like a simple statement. And so I'm wondering, in that, as folks are kind of having these conversations, how can they, really ensure that folks are connecting with their vision, aligned with those values, especially, as this tool is, being used, for networking opportunities or funding or whatever it may be. Any thoughts on that in terms of, mission value alignment?
Right. So when you get to mission and the company's mission, the value, it's definitely going to supersede the value proposition for a product or a service. Right.
Right.
So it won't the value proposition is meant to take a specific service or product and communicate its benefit clearly to a specific customer segment. When you get into wanting to, really share your vision as a company, which may supersede just that one product or service, that's a little bit different. The value proposition can be helpful. It can be used to support it, but it in and of itself will not capture the full mission or vision of the company, right? That you would have to probably use some different tools that I didn't provide today that I can
Yeah.
off the top of my head. But yeah, the value proposition is really about you're wanting to take a new service or product to market, and you want to increase your success. Okay, you want to be clear about what that product and service, who the service is for, the product is for, and the benefits and the problem that they solve. So it's really based on product and service, not the whole vision, which is also very, very important, but it's going to be a little bit different than just the value proposition.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's really helpful, because, there's like all of these, different pieces that founders have to like put together and it's like, okay, where does everything fit? What's the right place for each of these pieces? So,
And I would say this, Michelle. One way you could take the value proposition and kind of help with the mission is it's with the problem, right? So you as an entrepreneur, you want to position yourself as the trailblazer for that problem, and you want to get people to join your mission, join your vision of solving that larger problem. So that is one way to begin speaking to messaging. You can speak to if you have a one particular service or product that is key to your business. What is the problem that you're solving, and how do you position yourself as a trailblazer, and how do you get people to want to join you on that mission? Is the best way I'll probably think about it. Think about the problem that you're solving. Why is it so important? Why do people need to come and join you on this mission and be a part of it? I would think of it that way as an entrepreneur if I'm trying to think of the larger messaging, or even when it comes back to that networking. Position yourself as a trailblazer, and you're solving this very important problem with your service and your product.
amazing, Shannon. This has been so fantastic. If you had just one key takeaway or piece of wisdom you wanted to leave with everyone here today, what would that be?
It would be talk to your customers. Get out there, talk to your customers, validate that the problem you think they have is the problem that they have. This is going to save you so much time and money. I've worked with so many entrepreneurs that, they begin to talk to their potential customers and said, I'm so happy that I did not continue investing in this particular feature that no one cares about. But
Right.
but one thing you'll also figure out is what problem they do want you to solve. And you may be able to do, I know we don't have time today, you may be able to do what we call a pivot. You may be able to then pivot and address that need more closely and align it. So again, the takeaway is talk to your customers, find out what they value, and determine if you can meet that value. Talk to your customers.
Amazing, Shannon. This has been so wonderful. Thank you for setting such an incredible overview, and just sharing all of your insight with this community. So, on behalf of the NASDAQ Center and everyone here today, we are just so thankful that you joined us.
You're welcome. Thank you again for having me.
Awesome. And to our audience here, we'd love for you to join us again for upcoming webinars, which you can view using those links in the chat. We'll put some additional links there as well to connect with Shannon. And thank you all so much for joining us today. We look forward to welcoming you back online with us soon.